Hello everybody, I am Insomniac, and today for you fine folks I have the Highlander tutorial. Highlander was added in the recently released Grudge and Glory DLC for Honor, and he is the Viking character in this DLC pack. He is also categorized as a hybrid character. He is also supposedly hard to play, he has 2 combat forms, and is also a technical fighter. And of course, what all of this means, I'm gonna show you in this video. Today we're taking a look at Highlander and his hero specific traits as well as his moves, and as always in these types of videos, I start off with the moves. In the hero select screen, you have seen that Highlander has 2 fighting stances, so the first half of his move list focuses on the moves that he has in the so-called defensive form, and those are moves that you are most familiar with, as Highlander in this stance performs like any other character. He has his regular chains containing a light heavy, a light heavy, and heavy chain, and those look something like this: light heavy, then light and heavy, as well as heavy and heavy. Nothing all too special there. Highlander, as many other characters in this game, are not all about their chains, but he has a lot of useful chains here, as they provide him with just enough mix-up potential that you need. So yeah, the next move in his defensive form is called the Celtic Curse. It's a forward dash heavy, and this is one of his most useful moves, but we're gonna talk about why this move is so useful in a little bit. First of all, it looks something like this. Then, very important to notice here, Highlander can switch between the 2 stances on the fly, and that is done by holding down the heavy attack button. And in his offensive form, he gains access to a whole other list of moves. The first one noted here on the move list is that he gets unblockable heavy attacks. So every single heavy attack that Highlander does when in offensive form becomes unblockable, and those look something like this. Then Highlander gets the Caber Toss in the offensive form, and that is done by holding backwards with your movement keys or stick. On keyboard that would be S, and with the controllers that would be your left stick, and pressing guard break at the same time. And this is this grab. Highlander also gets a kick in the offensive form, and that is done by simply pressing guard break. And this kick looks something like this. So it is unblockable, really quick, and you can spam it quite heavily. Very interesting as well, his light attacks also change in the offensive form. They are now considerably faster, deal a little bit less damage, but they are enhanced. Now, enhanced light attacks we've already discussed in the Shugoki episode a while back, and enhanced light attacks mean that they don't bounce off if your opponent was to block them. However, with Highlander they are so extremely fast and you can spam them really quickly that your opponent is not all too likely to block them. It is still possible, but it is almost impossible to block these light attacks. Then Highlander gets a specific emote in the offensive form which has really good BM potential, but other than that it's a useless button in offensive form. And then he has the sprint attack, which is performed in neither of the 2 stances, as you have to do the sprint attack out of guard mode, which looks something like this. 2 very slow but quite hard hitting swings. Those were already all of his moves, and I'm already going to switch over to the hero specific traits, as those will explain all of the moves over here. As always, we don't care about renown and revenge mode. The first trait on the list tells you the most notable fact about Highlander that I've already talked about, and that is that Highlander has 2 different fighting stances, a defensive form and an offensive form. In the defensive form, Highlander is able to block, parry and guard break, and in the offensive form, Highlander gets access to a lot of unblockable attacks. The next trait entering offensive form is the trait equivalent to the move of entering the offensive form in the move list. So in order to enter offensive form, you have to hold your heavy attack button, and if you want to stay in the offensive form, you have to continuously hold down the heavy attack button. As you see, you change into the offensive form by holding down heavy. If you want to stay in offensive form, you obviously have to hold down the button. But what happens when you just release heavy attack? Yeah, you get the offensive form unblockable heavy. So as you can see right here, I am in the offensive stance now. If I release heavy, I get the unblockable heavy and I change back to the defensive form. If I, however, wanted to stay in the offensive form, I'd have to hold down heavy again after I've already done the swing. If I want to exit the offensive form without doing any attacks, first I have to press feint, like this. It is very important to note that Highlander can't block in the offensive form, as he holds his weapon behind him now instead of in front of him in the defensive form. His dodge remains the same, and interesting enough, the offensive form doesn't consume any stamina for as long as you're in it. If you perform the moves of it, obviously, it will cost stamina, but your stamina is able to regenerate even if you are still in it. You don't have to exit this stance for your stamina to come back. The offensive form unblockable heavy trait explains the offensive unblockable heavies further, as you only get them in the offensive form and you get them by releasing the heavy attack, as well as after performing the unblockable heavy you will automatically return to the defensive form just like this, unless you continue to hold down the heavy attack after having released it for the attack. So basically, if you're in the offensive form, you just release heavy and then immediately hold down heavy again, so that you go right back into the offensive form. So in order to stay in the offensive form, you have to hold down heavy. So this trait just allows us to perform his special moves whilst also holding down heavy. For any other character that would obviously not be the case, as you would attack when you're holding down heavy, but with Highlander you can be in the offensive stance and still get your kick or your grab. Now, one very important trait is this one right here, the fast flow trait. The reason why this trait is so important is because changing from the defensive stance into the offensive stance usually takes quite a bit of time, as you can see right here. That's how long it takes you to change between the two stances. But with the fast flow trait, you're able to go into the offensive stance a lot quicker than in neutral. As you can see right here, holding down heavy after a parry or a guard break throw or any attack other than the defensive form's chain finisher, which in this case would be the heavy swing of any of the three chains right here, you transfer really quickly into the offensive form, as listed right here after a guard break throw, for example. And this is what the fast flow looks like, as well as before you perform the heavy attack of your chain. So if I were to do light and hold down heavy, I transfer into the offensive stance really fast. The same thing goes with the heavy. If I then continue to hold down heavy, I chain into the offensive stance really quickly. And then the next trait just explains how you get out of the offensive form, which is by pressing feint. But this is not the only way on how you return back to your defensive form. Getting hit in offensive form also causes you to return to the defensive form, as well as if you do any of the offensive form specific attacks, you will return to defensive form automatically if you don't continue to hold down your heavy attack button. So if I was to do an enhanced light and release heavy, I change back into the defensive form. Same thing goes for the heavy. If I just release it but don't continue to hold it down, I will change back into the defensive form. Same thing goes for the kick as well as the grab. And the last offensive form specific trait is the offensive form enhanced light attack trait, which basically just tells you what I've already said, in that the light attacks are not interrupted on block, but the more important line on this trait is that the offensive form light can be used to cancel an offensive form unblockable heavy. So basically that means that you can do a unblockable heavy, but instead of going through with the heavy, you can cancel it by pressing light, which looks something like this. But the reason why this is so strong is because you see how the unblockable animation already comes up, but then out of nowhere you cancel that swing with a really fast poke. So this is really strong, because if your opponent tries to guard break you or go for the parry on the heavy, you get them before they try to do that by pressing light attack. Obviously the heavies can only be cancelled on startup. And now the trait list talks about the defensive form, and as you might have been able to tell, the defensive form heavy attacks have super armor, as well as the defensive form light attacks have superior block. As you can see right here, the heavies are uninterruptible and have super armor, and any of the first light attacks of Highlander have superior block, indicated by the golden glow of the weapon in the middle of the attack swing. Now you have to note that the second chain light does not have superior block, as that would be quite useless to have, but it is important for you to know that they don't have superior block. But any heavy attack is uninterruptible. The same goes for the Celtic Curse Heavy, as that is also uninterruptible. Then we have the zone attack trait, which just explains the zone attack. Now first of all, the zone attack looks something like this. 3 really slow but heavy hitting swings, and the trait just allows you to cancel after the first or second attack with feint, but you cannot fast flow to offensive form after that. So you can either cancel your zone attack after the first swing or after the second. You don't have to pull through with all 3 hits, as that would be really bad if that was the case. And then the sprint attack trait here explains the sprint attack a little further, obviously, as you can cancel after the first attack by pressing feint, and same thing with his own attack, you can't fast flow into offensive form after that. So you don't have to pull through with both swings, you only have to do one if you want to. Now, something that you have to know, the zone attack cancel timing is actually really weird. You have to cancel it quite late, in fact, but the cancel timing of the sprint attack is actually really fast. As you can see, I tried to cancel it a little bit late there, but I still got both swings. So you have to cancel the zone attack really late and the sprint attack really fast. Moving on, we have the last 3 traits right here, and those are really important traits. And those 3 traits are arguably the 3 most important ones for Highlander. The first one here is offensive form special cancels, and this sums up almost all of Highlander's mind game potential right here. I'm gonna go through this a little bit slower because this is a lot to take in, but this is very, very important to know. This is what makes the offensive form of Highlander so strong, or as strong as it is. Anyways, unblockable heavy can be cancelled into kick. So not only can you cancel the heavy attack by light, you can also cancel it by the kick. But that's not all of it. The unblockable heavy can also be cancelled into the caber toss, but it gets even better. The kick can also be cancelled into the caber toss. So you can see, you can cancel the heavies by your light attacks, you can cancel them by kick, and you can even cancel them directly into the grab. But because you can cancel the heavy into the kick and the kick into the grab, this obviously allows you to cancel the heavy attack into the kick, into the caber toss, or you can cancel the heavy attacks into a light, or into the caber toss directly. So this is very, very strong, as your opponent will either have to guess, do I have to parry this heavy attack? Do I have to dodge the kick that comes afterwards? Or do I not react to the heavy and kick and then dodge the grab? Or is he just gonna do a heavy directly into a light attack like this? So this gives Highlander a really big mind game potential. This is not only strong because of how many mix-ups this gives Highlander, it's also because the kick and caber toss guarantees some damage. So if I hit the kick, the unblockable heavy after the kick is a combo, and if I get the caber toss, the heavy after it also combos. So you can see why this mix-up is really strong, because if I do the heavy into kick, the unblockable is guaranteed anyways. Or if I do the kick into grab, the heavy after that is also guaranteed if timed correctly. And we're gonna talk about the timing of that in just a sec. But the thing is, if my opponent dodges the kick, the grab should catch them. It doesn't catch them all the time, but sometimes it does. Not only is the heavy attack guaranteed after the kick also wall splats, as you can see right here. And of course, after a wall splat, your unblockable heavy is guaranteed. But what is really special about this is that your grab after the the wall splat is also guaranteed, and after that you get the offensive form heavy. There's no particularly good reason for you to do this, as you get the same damage. You get the same damage after getting the kick, if it wall splat or not. But if you want to drain the opponent's stamina a little bit further, you could go for the grab instead. As you might have been able to tell there, the kick on its own does a tiny bit of stamina damage. However, the kick into grab depletes your opponent of about 40% stamina, so that's the only benefit to doing this, but damage wise you get the exact same damage. After the kick into wall splat, that does 30 damage, and after the kick into grab, into unblockable heavy, again does 30 damage as well. You have to decide for yourself, is the additional stamina drain of my opponent really worth this extra step, as it also costs almost half of your stamina to actually do this, where it costs you a lot less stamina to do this. Well, it's about 35% of your stamina, whereas the kick into grab, into unblockable heavy is about 50% of your stamina. And that's something very important for you to know. The offensive form of Highlander actually costs a lot of stamina. Even doing light attacks costs you a lot of stamina. As you can see, I can do 4 light attacks and then I'm almost out of stamina. And the next trait is again a very strong one. It is the Celtic Curse cancels, and those are the so-called soft feints of Highlander. You all know that this is a feint. You press feint on the startup of heavy attacks, and this is considered a hard feint as your opponent gets the feint animation after it. But what are soft feints? Soft feinting an attack is when you start up one attack but then cancel it by another move without having to press feint. The kick into grab, for example, is a soft feint, or could be considered a soft feint, but soft feinting usually refers to attacks. And now that you know that the Celtic Curse cancels are soft feints, what exactly is the cancel? The Celtic Curse on its own is a dash up top heavy, but this dash up top heavy can be cancelled into either a left or right attack by pressing either left or right with the heavy attack button input simultaneously. So I can dash up to my opponent and do the regular Celtic Curse heavy, or I can cancel it into either a right or left attack like this. Now the soft cancel part about it is my opponent sees the attack indicator for the top heavy right up until I actually do the move. But I can cancel this indicator by doing a side attack. Now if my opponent was to try to parry the top heavy and I cancel into a side heavy, this will hit them every single time. And it's also really important to know that you can do this cancel incredibly quickly. However, then it is not a soft feint anymore, as the attack indicator for the top direction doesn't stay up for as long. But you can cancel it really late into the animation as well, like this. That's about as long as you have to cancel it. A little longer than that and you will perform the attack. And all of these Celtic Curse attacks and cancels have super armor, as you can see. This top heavy has super armor and these side heavies have super armor as well. This heavy is considered the first in your chain, so you can cancel the Celtic Curse into your second heavies as well. And it's also important to know that you can go into the offensive stance right after performing the Celtic Curse or Celtic Curse cancel. And this is just what this last trait would have explained. So yeah, that's already everything that I wanted to show you versus the level 0 bot. Let's move on to the level 1 bot. So we're back here versus the level 1 bot, and now I'm gonna show you some of the things that I wasn't able to show off versus the level 0 bot, starting with the defensive form light superior block. The first light of Highlander has a superior block property, but it is not exactly just a superior block, it is a counter strike. With regular superior blocks, instead of the light trading with the other attack, you block their attack and then hit them with your light attack last seen on my Warlord tutorial. But the difference is that the superior light attack, that is a counter strike, actually gets a damage increase. Now Highlander's regular lights deal 15 damage, but the Counter-Strike actually deals 30 damage, so that's quite the increase, and the window for it is quite generous as well. So Highlander's light attacks work in the same way that Warden's top light does, as you Counter-Strike their attack and then you get a damage increase for that. The difference to Warden's top light is, however, that Highlander's light attacks are considerably slower, but their counter-strike window is a lot larger as well, and you can counter-strike the enemy attack after the 100th millisecond of your startup all the way down to your 400th. So you can see I can input it immediately and still get a counter-strike, or I can wait quite a while before I get it. So this is very, very useful, because this is one way on how you can get some damage on, for example, unreachable heavy attacks. Best example being Nobushi's side heavies, as your guard break doesn't reach after that one. And the best part about it is, not only do you counter-strike the enemy, you can also chain right into the offensive stance. Then, Highlander's fainting into guard break game is very different from a lot of other characters, as the regular heavy into guard break is actually very slow and doesn't catch a lot of heavy attacks. However, if I go into the offensive stance and feint a unblockable, that guard break is really fast. Or if I do the Celtic Curse cancels into the second heavy, that guard break is really fast as well, and the same thing goes for the regular heavy. Then, what mix-up beats what situation? If you're fighting as Highlander in a 1v1, you first have to find out how your opponent approaches the matchup. You see, depending on how your opponent reacts, you have to do different cancels. If your opponent tries to parry your unblockables, the most safe option to catch them with that is cancelling the unblockable into the kick, as the kick is fast enough to catch any heavy attack. The grab should catch them as well, but there are a few characters who have really fast light attacks. The most notable example right here would be Centurion, and I don't know if he beats your unblockable into grab cancel clean or if you trade, but if you trade, you take 25 damage from Centurion, and Centurion just hits you out of your grab, so that's not something that you want to happen. So if you have a Centurion against you that tries to parry your unblockables, simply cancel the unblockable into the kick. Now, cancelling the kick into the grab, what kind of purposes does this have? Well, if your opponent tries to dodge your kicks, the grab should catch them. But if your opponent backdashes late enough, the dash, depending on the character again, will outrange your grab. And this is most notable against assassins, because assassins have big dash ranges as well as they dash quite quickly. So if they dash backwards, they will most likely be out of your grab range. But if they do a side dash on reaction of your kick, you should grab them every single time. But again, the window for that is weird. If your opponent dashes late enough, they sometimes even out dodge your grab, which is really, really weird. That should be consistent, but for some reason it's not. The best character to do this on would probably be Shugoki, because his dash is slow and has really short range. So even if he backdashes, you will still grab him out of his backdash. It doesn't really matter if you cancel your unblockable into the kick or the grab directly, but cancelling your unblockable into the kick is the better option regardless, because the kick is safe on whiff. So even if your opponent gets used to that and dodges out of the way of the kick as well, if they then try to guard break, you can simply kick again before that. But the really great thing about the unblockable into grab cancel is that if your opponent dodges out of the way of the unblockable, the grab should catch them more consistently than the kick. The next thing that I want to show off is what is the optimal damage against every character in a few specific situations. I'm gonna have 3 categories for the optimal damage results, as assassins are different from regular characters and Conqueror is also different from any other character in the game. Let's talk heavy parries. If you parry a heavy attack, your punish always looks the same independently of what character's heavy you just parried. If you're not near a wall, the most damage that you can get is a guard break into zone attack cancel, as that does 25 damage. That's enough to kill after they have regenerated from under critical health, which is good. The problem is just with this punish that if you have less than half of your stamina bar, after the zone attack you will be put out of stamina, and since you cannot cancel the second and third hit when you're out of stamina of your zone attack, you have to pull through with all 3 swings. So if you have less than half of your stamina and the 25 damage hit is not gonna kill your opponent, the opponent will punish you with their out of stamina parry punish, which usually is the biggest punish that characters have. So you have to be extremely mindful of your stamina when you want to perform the guard break into zone attack cancel. Now, this this damage changes drastically if you are near a wall, as you can guard break, throw your opponent into a wall, and get any heavy attack after that. If you're in a side stance, you can either just throw them into the wall and do the heavy directly, or you can switch into the offensive stance after the guard break and do the unblockable. Those deal both 30 damage. But if you're already in the top stance, don't switch into the offensive stance, do the regular top heavy. That does 40 damage instead of the unblockables 30, so that is the more optimal choice. But when it comes to light attack parries, this is where it gets quite the bit more complicated, because assassins have the longest recovery time after a light attack parry. So what you can do against assassins, if you parry one of their light attacks in a side stance, you can go for the regular side heavy, as that is guaranteed to hit. You could also switch into the offensive stance and do your unblockable. Those deal both 30 damage, but the regular side heavy costs you less stamina, so do the regular side heavy after a side light parry. When it comes to the top lights of the assassins, go for your regular top heavy, as that does more damage than the unblockable and also costs less stamina, so that's clearly the better choice there. When you're facing off against non-assassin characters, the light attack parries get a little bit more simple, as no matter whose light attacks you parry, if they're not an assassin, even if you don't switch your guard stances, the regular heavies simply won't hit. If you parry a non-assassin's light attack, you have to switch into the offensive stance into the unblockable directly, and this can be a little tricky, as it even took me quite a long time to figure this out. As soon as you do a parry, you have to hold down your heavy attack button and not release it, as you would be used to get your attack that way. But with Highlander, you have to hold down your heavy attack button until you switch into the offensive stance, and then immediately release the heavy attack button to get your unblockable. That would be the optimal choice against non-assassin characters. So as you can see right here in the gameplay that I've grabbed right here to test out what punishes work on Conqueror's light attacks. As you can see right here, he can parry the unblockable if I go directly into it, but if I go into the offensive stance and then do the kick, he doesn't seem to be able to dash out of the way of the kick. So against Conqueror, if you parry a light attack, the most optimal thing you could do is either go into the offensive stance and perform a kick into unblockable, and if you're near a wall and you parry a top light of him, you guard break him, throw him into a wall, into a regular top heavy for 40 damage. But under any other circumstance than that, go into the offensive stance, do the kick as fast as you can, and then do the unblockable for a guaranteed 30 damage. If you go for the grab or the unblockable directly, Conqueror can either dodge out of the way or parry your unblockable. So you have to punish Conquerors differently. But the Conqueror match for Highlander is very weird anyways. But yeah, that's basically all that I can show you with Highlander for now. If you have any questions, be sure to leave them down below in the comment section. I will try to answer all of your questions down there. I know a lot of you have been patiently awaiting this guide in particular, as I have said that I will be doing this guide for a long time now, and I'm very glad that I was finally able to bring you guys the guide you deserve to see. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you learned something. If you did, be sure to leave the video a rating, as it really helps me out. But anyways, thanks so much for watching. Hope I'll see you next time. Take care.